everyone. We are ready to continue our day of Hearthstone Grandmasters here in the European region. I'm Raven, joining me is Sottle, of course, and we have two more matches left for you guys. And up next, we've got Jarla versus Swidz in our match number 3 of the day. And this one could get a little bit nutty. We've had some pretty fast-paced matches beforehand, but now we've got some pretty crazy decks to deal with, haven't we, Sol?
Yeah, Swidz certainly for his part has been operating a little bit differently so far and has continued to do so up until this point. Of course, he was one of the players to be bringing Zoo from the beginning when playing Zoo was considered a bit of a maverick move. But he is continuing to do so. But now on top of that, he has his build of Warrior, where he's still playing the bomb package with Wrench Caliber in there instead, as we've talked about a lot. But then to round it all out, outside of the Demon Hunter, he is playing Spell Mage, which we haven't, I believe, seen since week 1 Silver Name here in Europe, and I'm not seeing it at all in any of the other regions.
He is not playing Spell Mage. He is playing 2 of
Oh,
Mage.
sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
You are absolutely right.
I'll stop you there.
Thank
you were saying was correct in terms of Silvername brought Spell Mage a while ago, but yeah, this is the 2 of. So basically, this just gets to Yogbox you more often and more consistent.
You are right. I have my wires completely crossed. We will get to that somewhere further down the line. But yes, this is Sottle's worst nightmare mage instead, which might be why I repressed it out of existence there, going through the intro. And yeah, whoever came up with these names, this was not us. Yeah, that is a pretty accurate description of what is going on here, because essentially this deck gives up the Highlander cards, so you're giving up your Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, your Reno, and your Zephyrus for the ability to just Dragon Caster people way more often than you would otherwise, and also play more consistent removal in the early game, because of course you have double Frost Nova, you have double Ray of Frost, you have double Blizzard. These are all things that are one-offs. However, in the Highlander deck, there are sort of equivalent second copies of cards. So, for example, it's 1 Blizzard, 1 Rolling Fireball, for example, in the Highlander deck that sort of can substitute in pretty similar spots. But yeah, I think we might just see some fireworks this series. This way, this is potentially panning out.
Yeah, and one thing to note as well, we can get to the craziness that is Mage a little bit later on. But for now, Sottle, double Hunter ban, which means double Warrior availability for these players as we go into game number 1. Swidz on the top on this Zoo list, and Jarla on his Warrior. And we're going to get to see Warrior for the first time today in Europe. And again, you know my thoughts on not banning Warrior, so don't agree with it ever.
Not ever. Absolute statement.
Ever. Oh, I do believe Swidz's Warriors banned. I did think. I thought he just had a double Hunter banned. Okay. I am seeing things. Never mind. Swidz's Warrior is banned, but Jarla's is left.
Yeah, no great surprise from Jarla to be just saying, okay, cool, I get to play Warrior. Let's play Warrior. Let's just not mess around anymore. Like, what exactly is the bad matchup you're going to cue into me here for this deck? Does full mulligan, which I definitely agree with there. I think it was double Battle Rage and Rampage that he threw away. You really want to look for Sky Raider for your weapons, for Ankar, for Risky Skipper, for all of that kind of stuff in the early game in this matchup. So I agree with the full mulligan, but Jarla does not really get rewarded for it as he ends up with just a slightly different, clunky-looking hand than the one he would have had if he'd have kept some cards. Ugh.
Ooh. Yeah, it's not looking fantastic, is it? There's not much you can even do, right? Is this going to be a game where we see, for example, Bloodsworn Mercenary on 3, Korkron on 4, just to stay competitive? One benefit Jarla does have is that Swidz, we can see, does not have a scrapping turn lineup.
That is true. And there are still a lot of draws that can dig Jarla out of this. Just off the top next turn, I mean, he can draw weapons, he can draw a 1/10 that kills this 2/2. There's still plenty of gas that he can find that can dig himself out of this very quickly.
And my thoughts, again, depending on next draw of just getting the Mercenary down, is if it lives, it's just a damaged thing for Blood Bowl Brute, or if it damages something else, you know, say Matron trades into it, then at least it reduces Blood Bowl Brutes down a little bit. I think Jarla has to pull something pretty big out the bag, even though Swidz's hand isn't top level Zoo potential like RDU's was in the last series.
Yeah, I think if Jarla was up against RDU's hand here, we might already be talking about next game. But this is a very slow opener for Swidz. Not much pressure being developed, and there you go. Livewire Lance, very nice. Does give Jarla at least some hope here, but I do like Swidz also developing the Voidwalker here, knowing that if he sees no play on 1 or 2, there's a decent chance that there is a 2/2 weapon in the hand already. And without Corsair Cash being cast, he knows that this Voidwalker is going to be a blocker for it.
So just to note, something I can get right in terms of lineups and builds. Jarla's Warrior is what would say the meaty list, I guess, with the Captain Greenskin, the Deathwing we can see in hand, and the Grommash Hellscream as the build, and no eggs, which means that he's running this newer version of the list hailed as the best. But it does mean
by meaty.
By meaty, yeah.
Yeah.
I often do that with Hunter as well. This is the best Hunter list. Why? Because but I will say it does mean there are slower opening potentials, right? If he had any of those inclusions, we can see the Deathwing, but if he had a Greenskin, it would be relatively slow versus some of the more consistent earlier game cards that some of the other builds are running. So although the deck has had some great success, there are its drawbacks.
Yep. Eggs and Injured Tolvir are kind of the big cards. Eggs or Injured Tolvir, I guess I should say, to be precise. The big cards that are potentially missing from that list, which, if that would have been a 2-drop play here if any of these, if the Deathwing, for example, was a 2-drop instead. I like the play from Jarla, though. I think this signals an intention just to play the Kor'kron on curve next turn, just to be able to more efficiently trade through the board. Value trade the Voidwalker with the Kor'kron, and then he has freedom to swing the weapon wherever he wants. Fortunately, Swidz developed a 5/5 in that time, which means Jarla is still way over contested no matter what he does here.
Yeah, I think Jarla is edging towards the territory of just needing an Ethereal Lackey and some kind of either AoE, a Whirlwind or one of the other variable types, or some hard kind of AoE like a Brawl or an Execute maybe for that 5/5. There's just something from an Ethereal Lackey, I think, is almost a requirement, unless you get sort of a risky skipper in the next turn, maybe the next turn or 2.
Yeah. I think Rush Lackey can still do some work here. Kobold, or not here, but potentially on the coming turns. Yeah. You can just rush Bomb Wrangler into something on turn 5, potentially. Still pretty sure this turn is just Kor'kron and Smack. That is not the one he wanted.
The one he definitely didn't want, right?
Correct.
Even Titanic and Kobold have their place in terms of how he wants to fight this matchup.
Yep.
There is a damaged minion on the board, though, Sottle, so it does mean that these Blood Boils are slightly close to being playable.
Many possibilities.
Don't think it's going to be hanging around for too long, though, Raven.
Yeah, there's even the clean carpet into Og Merchant, even Divine Shield the carpet. If he wants to.
Sure. It would then be damaged and Divine Shielded, though, which
it would.
Whether you considered that a significant downside or not. You can use the Orc Merchant here just to kill the Kor'kron, which would then result in 0 damage minions being left in play at the end of the turn, which is kind of premium against Warrior a lot of the time.
Probably worth it. He has enough 1-drops now to make this carpet very good in the next following few turns.
Yeah.
It's going to go around this way, I like.
Certainly the line my brain diverted me to.
I did wonder if he should have played a different 1-drop instead of the Flame Imp this turn. He might have actually wanted the Flame Imp 4 damage rush as a more powerful responsive play, as opposed to the carpet and 2 1/1s that become 2/1s with rush.
Yeah, maybe.
Only a small thing, but I feel like the Flame Imp dies to anything that a 1/1 would generally die to anyway, i.e. risky skipper plays or trades. So I wonder if holding that... He does have Soulfire in case of emergency, though.
Well, I'm looking at it the other way. I'm into playing the Flame Imp because it's a 3-2, and if Jarla hits a 3-2 with his face this turn, well, then you have double Soulfire in your hand. I'm not looking at those in case of emergency. Well, actually, I am. I'm looking at those in the ultimate emergency, which is my opponent is alive, and he needs to be dead.
The weird emergency soul. Don't call emergency services with that one. It's going to get a very weird phone call, isn't it?
I think they've got enough to be dealing with right now.
Very true. Jarla does have a re-equipped weapon, but because he has swung it this turn, then it's not worth. I feel playing the 4-2, which means it's not going to be worth it. If he could swing as well, maybe it's going to be worthwhile in the following turns. But really, I think Jarla just needs to hold on till he can get his Deathwing or Blood Boil Brutes.
That seems so far away right now, though.
It does, but it's the only plan he's got, right?
Yeah.
His hand is double Deathwing, double Blood Boil Brute. What's going on?
Yeah. This is probably like bottom 10% of possible draws with this deck. Really, really miserable.
Wait, was this not?
You wanted to carpet?
I wanted to just double Soulfire.
Well, I mean...
Life tap Soulfire?
But don't you want to discard specifically Hand of Gul'dan?
It's lethal if he doesn't discard it.
Oh, was it? Okay. That makes sense.
There we go. Okay. I was just worried about what he was going for first, right?
Well, in that case, what he did is right? Because he can discover, for example, a third Soulfire off the Spell Lackey, which then guarantees it. Yeah. And it's still just one card being replaced with one card in his hand, so he's actually increasing his odds of doing it that way.
No, you're right. I was just, when he did the Ethereal, there was just a worry that he was going to try and do something else. You know, like play for board against a Bomb Wrangler, which would have felt very bad, something like that. But I definitely like that he did just go for it, because in those moments, especially against Warrior, you take that chance at winning, because it was pretty likely. It wasn't even he had 3 cards in hand and 2 were Soulfire. He had a pretty big hand to make that pretty likely. So Swidz getting a good win there with honestly one of the worst, or against one of the worst openings I've seen a Warrior have for a long time, really. I think that was as bad as it was going to get for Jarla, actually.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it was so easily fixable, right? Like Corsair Cash on 2, suddenly his weapon does 3 damage, so he's just plowing through the Voidwalker, he's clearing up the board step by step. If the weapon he drew was Ankar and not Livewire Lance, well, most of the time then you get a Risky Skipper off one of the 2 swings, especially since he drew like Sky Raider naturally. So yeah, there was a lot of things that could have potentially dug him out of that, but yeah, Blood Boil Brute, in the opening hand alongside with Deathwing Mad Aspect, yeah, it's going to be a problem. But I do want to commend Swidz, because I think he caught on to the kind of clunky hand he was dealing with over on the other side, and very specifically engineered situations where he was not taking any value trades, because value trades mean injured minions. Injured minions mean discounted Blood Boil Brutes. Discounted Blood Boil Brutes mean playable cards for Jarla. If you're going to put your opponent in a situation where they're not having any playable cards, good job. That'll get you through some zoo games.
Yeah, and we saw that when I was talking about earlier of if Ethereal Lackey plus a Whirlwind, just a few points of damage generation came out, the Blood Boil Brutes become much more playable. And yeah, as you said, there was obviously no Whirlwind, but Swidz just ensured that there was not even 1 damaged minion, which was pretty insane. I think I would have broken and just played the carpet, and then that's much more likely to just sit around and be damaged because it's high health total. But yeah, I do agree. Very, very impressive play from Swidz. See if he can keep it up as he locks in the Sottle Killer, I guess. his Mage, as I think TJ did name it. Went up against this Demon Hunter from Jarla.
SpaghettiOs Mage.
There's the key card of the deck. The box of Yogg-Saron. One thing I do think is a little bit... I want to use the word cool, because I'll probably get in trouble for calling this deck cool. But the Azure Explorers is a nice addition to the deck, because as you mentioned, if you run in 2 orbs, you want to Dragon Caster stuff very often and very consistently. And as your Explorer ×2 in the list helps with just having that Dragon activator, because one of the problems we run into when we see a lot of Reno Mage is, oh, Dragoncaster, no Dragon, because you only run about 4. You know, and that can become a little bit difficult. But now, with the extra Dragons in this deck, and obviously the 2 orbs, it makes these Dragoncasters and Malygos, as we can see, and now, so consistent. It's almost like a guarantee by the time you get to turns 5 and 6.
Right.
I grow impatient.
And now, do you think it's important for Jarla to just almost not ignore the deck he's playing against, but just kind of head down focus on saying, okay, it's just nothing overly fancy, just the best, strongest turns, and try and pressure him out and punish for the lack of Reno, the lack of Zephyrus, and for the lack of some of the more defensive tools?
It's certainly a different mindset, right? There's so many different breakpoints that you're just not playing around because the cards are so different. And this turn here was actually a pretty good example. I think potentially against a Highlander version, you would have just taken the extra damage on the Battle Fiend there instead and just said, okay, I'm going to play my Battle Fiend and then just hero power you. And then next turn I will play the Beaming Sidekick. Because yeah, you're vulnerable to like double Ray of Frost or Arcane Breath in that scenario. But they only play one of each of those cards, so chances are you get away with it, and then you get to push more damage over the course of a couple of turns. But because both of those cards are 2-ofs in this list, you've got to be sort of hyper-aware and play around the breakpoints differently.
Yeah, there's a big difference between being punished by 2 and 4 cards in the list. It's kind of crazy. You see as well, the coin from Jarla with that Twin Slice means he does have access to a Gravebound next turn to push even more damage. And again, Sidekick just doing the work, requiring a ping and this Flame Ward to deal with this Battle Fiend. And honestly, a Flame Ward, although not feeling great for Jarla, this is a pretty low value one against Demon Hunter, killing 2 1-drops and that's it.
It is, and Jarla, so Swidz decides to turn it down completely.
I will say, plays like this, although logical, can be punished because the more you hold off on a Flame Ward, on basically an AoE removal of the threats, well, if Jarla just develops a weapon this turn and hits again, well, does Swidz play the Flame Ward next turn then? No, because there's not enough threat. And then, have you just taken too much damage by that point? I think it's a very tricky line to toe as to when is the right time to opposite.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because in this scenario, you can kind of make an argument both ways, where if Swidz was expecting Flame Ward, then now he has Ping again and Flame Ward, and he's technically getting extra value out of his Flame Ward that he wouldn't have got otherwise, right? He's dealing with a Gladebound that he would have had 0 answers to if he'd have just played the Flame Ward on the previous turn. But he also has Malygos in his hand. So you can also present the argument to say, well, if you'd have played the Flame Ward last turn, then maybe this board state is different, and you have more ability to just play Malygos without getting punished.
And also, one of the problems with Flame Ward as well is the minion gets to attack, which means that yes, okay, it clears the board, but this Battle Fiend does infinitely more damage because it already gets to lock in 2 attacks instead of 1. And the freeze is huge because it means now the Adept can't attack and gain that 6 extra damage through a Flame Ward.
Okay, knowledge has been gained. It is Flame Ward, it is not Ice Barrier.
You can push 4 and then deal another 4, which looks good. Because this Malygos does not warrant any form of respect. At this moment in time, got 7 damage when your opponent has around that life. It is not quite worth killing a 2-attack minion for.
Agreed. And there is no Conjurer's Calling in the deck, so no real reason to respect any minion that your opponent plays if it's not an immediate threat to the board state, which this is not.
If it's not a taunt, I'm not going to look at it.
There must be a way.
And Swidz is looking very dead.
Well
Arena would have been nice there. On turn 6, but not the case, of course, with this 2 off deck. Swidz is locked in, does take the loss, the Jarla's Demon Hunter. And this is where, I guess, I raised the questions about this deck, and maybe my own lack of knowledge about the deck, so my fault, but I haven't been playing a lot of this mage on ladder recently or anything, is where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses, right? Because to me, that looks like an outcome that probably happens quite often. You just die a lot of the time. Even if that was a dragon cast into box on 6, does that reliably keep you alive enough? I'm not sure. But a lot of the time it feels like aggro is the way to go, even though the list runs 2 Novas, 2 barriers. But I honestly don't know. Like, is this deck supposed to be aggro matchups? Is it better versus control?
So I was wincing preemptively because I'm about to have to defend this deck, which I'm really not interested in doing. But in the interest of balance, yes. Like, you know, I know you obviously made it a comment facetiously, but you said our Reno would have been really good here. Well, you can just make the argument that that Reno is a second Dragon Caster in this list. So if that card was drawn, he'd have a Dragon Caster that turn, which also would have been completely insane with the hand that he had. And then in terms of the aggro question, well, you know, technically there's 2 Arcane Breaths, there's 2 Ray of Frosts, there's 2 Ancient Mysteries that find you Flame Wards. Like, you do have some additional consistency in the early game to make up for the lack of, like, Zephyrus being a panic button sometimes early on against aggro. But I think, you know, one of the big potential misses in this deck is Doomsayer, that the Highlander Mage does often have access to, because that can just be a complete swing turn against aggro, which is super, super important. This deck just doesn't have that option. But like, TLDR version, I think that was not a representative version of, like, an average draw of this deck.
But it's where, honestly, I'm half asking this question because I just want to hear your answer, but half because I'm still unsure, because although there are 2 ofs of those, there's also 2 puzzle boxes in the list, 2 Tortollans, a Power of Creation, 2 Deep Freezes, 2 Blizzards. All of those are a lot of 6+ mana cards. Maybe you can discount the Blizzards because of Dragoncaster, but that's still like 2 10 mana cards, 2 8 mana cards. You know, there's more early game, but also a ton more late game you can draw that's just unplayable for half of any given game. So still just very up in the air, and we, of course, have not seen tons of this deck be played in any form of competitive setting. So excited to see more as we go into game number 3.
But again, once more, in the interest of balance only. So you can start to substitute those cards, right? So there's a second copy of Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. Let's call that Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. There's a second Tortullan Pilgrim. Let's call that Siamat. Right? There's actually
I want to call that one Zephyrus, Sol.
Okay, sure. But you get one. There are expensive cards in the Highlander deck that are not in this one. It's actually not that much greedier overall. Right, can I get back to hating this deck now?
Yeah.
Can you just pretend to really like this deck so I can disagree with you and feel how I feel at the same time? Is that okay? Can we do that?
This is it. What's really going to get you later on when you think about this conversation is, did I take this negative approach on purpose just because I knew you would have to defend it?
Oh no, that won't bother me at all, because I 100% know that's what happened. That won't. I won't lose any sleep over that whatsoever. Don't you worry.
Well, this does look like a much more attractive opening hand here for Swidz if he wants to beat back an aggressive opening. Double Dragon's Breath. There's a Flame Ward already in hand. There's a Ray of Frost, which would have been huge, of course, in the previous game. Along with a third puzzle box, maybe. Why not? No, seriously, though, I do love Ice Barrier against Warrior, because they do, a lot of the time, want to pressure in the early to mid game, and then try and finish you with the Grom combo, and Ice Barrier just messes up those numbers quite quick.
Yep, it does. There's definitely been numerous games playing Warrior where it's kind of an auxiliary win condition, right? Like, sometimes you don't draw all the explosive value engine cards you need, you don't get to draw your deck with Battle Rage and Risky Skipper, and you're just sat on a hand that looks a bit like this. Weapon, green skin, Corkron combo, damage lackey. And that really just signifies one thing, which is push damage as efficiently as you can. So yeah, Ice Barrier can make a mess of that plan sometimes.
Bit of an interesting kobold for me there, Sol. I did wonder whether that was worth saving for next turn to proc a Bloodsworn Mercenary. A little bit crazy, I know, but I think an early Bomb Wrangler going wide is one of the ways that I've seen a lot of success versus Mage when you don't have those big combo go-off pieces in hand.
Yeah, so I think Jarla's pretty locked in to Greenskin next turn, so you'd be holding on to it for multiple turns at that point, which is a little bit less appealing. Sure. But I did also look at the same thing when I saw the Kobold Lackey appear. It's just that it's 2 damage as well, right? Like, weirdly, if it did 1, that would be even more appealing.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Deal with the Flame Ward. That's the correct attack to deal maximum damage. Imagine we're just going to see Greenskin get developed here. You do sometimes feel like this should be hitting Ankar when you've seen 0 pirates, but there has to be an Ankar before that can be a reality, so just go ahead and jam it on the weapon you've got.
And it really is a card that if you play it on curve, you do just go, because especially in this point for Jarla, it's less of it being value or drawing cards. It's more of it. It's more damage, right? Because he has Kor'kron, he has 2 Bloodsworn Mercenaries, now another Kobold as well. Again, although not optimal, he does have a way to proc a Kor'kron damage and then Bloodsworn Mercenary for a relatively cheap.
So options this turn look like rolling Fireball to try and set up a clearer way for the Dragoncaster turn next turn, or just go ahead and play Power of Creation this turn.
There is a Yogg box. So...
I just knew you were going to say that.
Yes. And I'm going to continue to point it out.
Raven tilted me off the face of the earth yesterday.
It was very funny. There was a point where I was like, I cannot speak to Saul after this because he'll shout at me.
We wasted like 30 minutes playing this matchup of Rogue versus Mage, and then one turn he just drew Puzzle Box and just played it when it wasn't even good. We're supposed to be learning things about the matchup. And he's like, nah, Puzzle Box. Screw it, waste everyone's time.
That annoyed you a lot?
You learnt really efficient ways to annoy me, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Straight after that game, I was like, right, I'm just going to take a 15-minute break to go and eat. And didn't come back. I was scared.
Just airing our dirty laundry on stream now, Raven. I don't know what this has turned into.
You started it. In the meantime, I do think there is a plan here for Jarla to actually use this Kobold, maybe depending on what his swing kicks out in terms of Lackey, but the Kor'kron into Bloodsworn might not be too silly, even though it does only activate basically like 8 damage, right? Because you can't inner rage it as well. If you had inner rage, you'd just do that the other way around.
Bite-sized Summoner's interesting.
What about just a Walmart
not removed?
Yeah, I like it. Although, would you put it in the middle?
Might have put it next to the Greenskin. So if Greenskin gets targeted, Rolling Fireball is essentially just 5 mana kill Captain Greenskin.
Either way, I do.
But
like
he doesn't know it's there, right? Like it's one of those weird things where you're talking about like Cone of Cold positioning, for example, right? Because it's a generated spell. It's not really something that you have in your mind to play around.
Yeah, I think I might have naturally played around it because I'm so used to playing against Reno Mage, right? And not this. It's like might have just been more of a natural consideration, but Paul's favorite time of the day.
Cone of Cold positioning, okay.
Blur, pretty good protection from your own Yoko.
My hand is full.
Not the best.
Live by the box, die by the box.
If it has to be coin into Ray of Frost on this Greenskin because Swidz did burn an ice barrier, so he is slightly low on resources. It would, of course, limit his late game turns and the acceleration for them, i.e. getting to Reno, getting to coin out something else a little bit later on. But he burnt Alex and he burnt Ice Barrier.
Yeah. Does have Blizzard and Rolling Fireball to still further to kind of bridge those gaps, but now Jarla even gets to play with his pint-sized summoner I was talking about on the previous turn, which is pretty sweet. He also has an incredibly janky Korkron combo activator with the Kobold Lackey if he wants to set up for that kind of plan.
I think I really like the idea of Jarla getting Blood Bowl Brute down this turn. You don't want them to be Reno'd away or anything like that late game. I guess a box has already been played. But in this matchup, especially because it's not Reno, I think he just wants to get the most power on board. And it costing only 3 with the help of the pint-sized, of course. It's completely reasonable here. And I'm not really sure what the punish would even be for playing outside of it being frozen, but it's like, well, if it's frozen, then great, it's still there on the board.
Ooh.
Well, Rampage is a card here, isn't it?
Corsair Cash is also a card here. Rampage is very exciting. I will give that to you.
Rampage with Korkron and the Bloodsworn Mercenary is cheap. He can
50%
still use the Kobold to cast it on 10 mana.
50% of the time, Corsair Cash is just so much card draw, though. Card draw begets card draw. Like, if you hit Ankar off that Cash, and then, you know, thin out some Pirates from your deck, you're just so much more likely to draw Inner Rage and Battle Rage and all the cards that will help you end the game with this hand. But additional damage in play also helps you end the game.
I will say as well, I think for Jarla, a consideration of ending the game now and not spending turns drawing, probably pretty good recognition of how this deck is built in terms of the mage, right? Doesn't want everything to be Reno'd away and gain armor. Doesn't want more freezes to come out or more time for him to draw freezes or for mage to prop another box and maybe just flip the game on its head. So I think I like Jarla leaning towards ending this game sooner rather than later.
See, I don't know. Maybe it's because I can see a Blizzard, but I feel like this board doesn't get there. And that if you're, you know, playing the Kobold Lackey in particular, like you at minimum need another activator for your Korkron Elite to be able to end this game. Because again, remember, this is double Blizzard, double Frostnova. This deck.
I am personally unsure about the Kobold Lackey play there. I will point that one out. I think that as a keep until you got an Inner Rage was vital, mainly because if you don't get an Inner Rage, you can activate it. If you do get an Inner Rage, just Kobold them in the face anyway. It's the same, right? That's a card that
Nothing.
Heroic Strike.
It's just literally always Heroic Strike out of these, right? Pretty sure.
Yes. Mainly because, do you want to, here's an idea, right? You stick a Lackey, which you probably don't unless you play multiple of them, then you can use the Blade Storm with the Korkron to prot the Korkron and not kill it because it would kill a Lackey first. And then Bloodsworn.
Okay.
It's an activator, Sol. It's an activator.
It's a 10 mana play, but alright. And you also have to have the Lackey. You also have to have the Lackey on the board at the start of the turn because you can't afford to play it.
We didn't discuss the possibility of it actually happening, Sol. I just said it could.
Okay.
Lorinda, can you give me the stats on that outcome happening, please? Oh, a Nova.
That's what I mean, right? It's double Frostnova, double Blizzard, Tortollan Pilgrim to cast those even if they're not in your hand, Malagos to find more of those options. Like, I really felt like Jarla was going to need to draw more cards to like more consistently get this burst damage lethal from hand and not from board. But maybe I am just misguided.
Or
Nice.
1 mana off. What if he just makes a Warmaul Challenger now with Mercenary, and then next turn he has Skipper, Korkron, Mercenary, Heroic Strike?
I wonder.
Sorry. I'm silent because I'm thinking. I find this deck genuinely too interesting to cast it. I just want to shut up and think about it. I don't want to have to say things. Imagine saying things.
Well, the important thing here is because Swidz used that coin earlier on for that Ray of Frost,
Yeah.
it means that Jarla knows 100% Reno is not poofing away these minions and gaining 5 armor. So he knows that is not going to happen. So I was wondering, does he just make the biggest, scariest board ever? Or does he just pass to make sure he has room to do the big play next turn?
So yeah, I'm thinking the board is already big and scary enough to the point where he knows it's Malagos Nova or it's Tortolan into another Blizzard or Frost Nova. Like, I just don't think the board has to get any bigger to demand another freeze from the opponent here.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable as well.
I'm kind of into this. My big question was like whether you wanted to deal damage this turn. See whether you wanted to like Heroic Strike to open up like an Inner Rage top deck, for example, because then you can Corcoran Inner and play both Bloodsworns if something nonsense happens.
Also,
Observe.
we're going deep.
Reflect.
It would actually play around the Swidz Frostball and you in the face from the Malagos.
Ready
Sure.
for a show?
Ooh, doesn't look like taunts to me. Or rush minions. That is one of the lower power of creations I've seen.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
Wait, how much does... Did he Frostball his own 5/5? Does that ever help him?
No.
Imagine though, no skipper, he just pulls out the Bloodsworn mercenaries. That does look like it's going to be game though.
No fancy Bloodsworn combo needed, just straight up Heroic Strike plus Corcoran from hand is going to end the game. And Jarla does get over the line, and what I think was pretty interesting from both sides is I think that Swidz had different outs that turn as well, right? He didn't necessarily have to go Power of Creation. He could have dug for a option from the Tortolan instead to find his way out of it, which he does still have a couple of them left remaining in his deck, board freezes specifically, I mean. So yeah, I think that matchup is always going to be pretty difficult to navigate when there's just such a range of random nonsense things that can happen that it's really kind of hard to contemplate. Like, case in point, like we're staring at a rolling fireball going, oh, is your positioning exactly right against this rolling fireball that's in his hand? Well, you know, they don't know that, and you can raise that to the 10th power in terms of the amount of random nonsense that deck can do. So definitely a very, very difficult one to navigate, but does mean that the Warrior gets a win, perhaps even a game slower than we might have expected. It took 2 attempts for the Warrior to get its win in this series after being controversially left up.
Yeah, and I will say as well that it did highlight the power of just one more challenger once again, and to a lesser extent Blood Bowl Brute, because the sheer health on board made, like, outside of just freezing the board out and waiting, well, how is he ever going to kill it outside of Reno as well, right? There was no way that board was actually going to die ever, so it was very much on Swidz to make something happen that wins him the game, because outside of that, there was even an argument where Jarla could have kind of just kept waiting if he really wanted to, right? Because how do those minions ever die? It's crazy.
Yeah. I do think that was super clutch because, yeah, that board was big enough, and I think he, by keeping all the resources available, by not making like another Blood Boil with the Bloodsworn Mercenary, he gave himself, like I said, the option to like find Inner Rage off the top, or even to go off twice in, you know, staggered turns if it came down to that. It was going to be unlikely to be relevant because there's not a great deal of straight up healing in the deck, but there are ways to generate healing, and random cards can cast healing, and Puzzle Box can do all kinds of things, and obviously if the game was extended for one more turn, there was still that 5 armor that needed to be contended with from Reno the Relicologist. So I did really like the full hold from Jarla there.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens going forward as well, because I believe it is going to be a Mage Mirror, but 1 Reno and 1 2-up, so a true clash of the Titans going in there. Although saying that, I might not be, because Swidz might not be queuing the Mage, does he? He does have Demon Hunter left that he could queue as well, so we will see as the players get into it. But so far, this Mage has not been doing the work for Swidz, with now 2 losses to its name in this series alone.
Yeah, and it did look like he had a much smoother hand that game as well. He had the early stuff. He had Arcane Breaths and Ray of Frosts just to be able to stall early on, find some decent mid-game options. It was just a matter of just how bad his box was, really. It didn't do anything. It drew a couple of cards and then burned a couple more and just didn't really address the board state whatsoever. But again, what can you say? Live by the box, die by the box.
Yeah, it's one of the things you do have to realize is if you are going to bring not only Reno Mage, but one that's going even deeper down that rabbit hole, then you are susceptible to these things happening. It is a Mage Mirror there. It's going to be the Reno Mage from Jarla versus the Mage from Swidz. I feel like I'm saying that. Let's
Yep.
get
Yeah, you are.
into it. It's just a yog box of ways to say it, right? You just don't know what you're going to get every time.
Stitch together 10 random syllables and make it a word.
So far, though, Jarla just having that escaped Mana Saber is more and more obvious as time goes on how much of a key that card is in terms of just unlocking further plays of the deck. I like the keep. Even in Prison's Observer, even though there's not too much to actually I-beam away with that that minion's ability, just having another threat on board pop out is good enough.
Yes, agreed. I also like Swidz' mulligan. It looks weird, but this is what his deck does. He just kept Dragoncaster and a dragon. Doesn't really need to mulligan for early plays in this matchup, but oh boy. Jarla can take charge now if he wants to. That's ramp into ramp.
I'm always of two minds about this, though, right? It never adds up that cleanly.
Your wish is my suggestion.
I guess it's okay. First test out for Swidz there, just getting the Arcane Breath down. And he does have Dragoncaster and Activator, so I do wonder if it's ever... I know I'm going to bring up Box, but it is a major part of this deck, right? So I don't think, at least in Swidz' deck, it's too silly to mention just picking Box, because you already have two in there.
No, I think Puzzle Box is a very real choice here. Especially if your opponent is wild growthing you as you're expecting, there's a decent chance that your Dragoncaster into Power of Creation on turn 6 will actually just be behind the play based on what your opponent can do. And they still have wild growth and coin, and you're 3 turns away from making that happen. So I think Dragoncaster into Puzzle Box on that turn is actually something that you're really happy to have in your back pocket. Case in point, if Jarla plays Mana Saber here, he can just play Power of Creation.
He could
Next turn.
Go. Yeah.
He can just hardcast it.
I think as well with the, I would say the amount. Oh, okay. I was wondering with the, if you went Power of Creation this turn, the Malygos plus spell to sort of cover the gap you create by using it, but I did think I'd point for something. So, of course, the Malygos looking pretty good right now.
I was going to say, what's going on?
Yeah, I thought it was on coin.
No.
I get thrown off by the the mana from Wild.
What to do?
This turn's awkward.
I wonder.
Power of Creation is good sometimes. Rusted Raider is decent all of the time, but sort of inefficient in terms of mana that we're spending this turn.
Time runs out on me.
It doesn't really line up so well, does it? We get the news about Flame Ward, not Ice Barrier. Just gonna go with Power of Creation. Ugh. Another fairly low value power there.
Yeah, it did seem like it.
But because of that, is this really something you want to Power of Creation into yourself? Or does Swidz now lean more towards the box?
Yeah, he can also just Frost Nova it and then Flame Strike it away and then start his nonsense the turn after.
I was just wondering, do you really want to commit both of those cards to clearing Hoggers? Because for me, with that Flame Strike feels like a great response to an Alexstrasza turn.
Sure.
Also, the Nova, depending on what kind of dragons get kicked out of Alexstrasza, of course. So I feel like those tools are very powerful the more the game goes on. And it is only Hogger. You beat that guy like level 10, maybe 11.
I don't like the power of creation play because you're just responding
Yes,
in kind.
agree.
You're just responding in kind, but you're a turn behind, right? So you're just giving your opponent free initiative, and eventually you're going to Frost Nova into Flame Strike them a lot of the time anyway, right? Like maybe you can use power of creation to stall for your Flame Strike instead, but that seems much worse. So I think if you weren't going to do this play, you're just rolling the dice on box again, right? Like I think that's the only other viable play this turn.
Yeah, I agree. I just think the box was the play.
Okay.
And that's all. Mainly because if you can accelerate things and your whole deck is about accelerating out spells, and then you just choose not to Dragoncaster on 6, it feels bad. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision. It feels bad.
Sure.
Now, I just think the Frost Nova, and if it is Flame Strike, which I think is almost forced into this turn, right? Then that insane Flame Strike is used on killing 4 4s and 2 2s. A normal Flame Strike would do that, Sol.
It would. That's true.
Why has he got a fancy one?
So the reason why I think this is the line is that it passes back into your opponent's 8 mana turn. You also froze their Mana Saber last turn, so they couldn't do anything rampy on the previous turn either. So now it's not like you're just letting them develop into a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, for example, right? They're likely to have a fairly low threat board this turn, especially having played their Power of Creation. This Deep Freeze is probably the best thing that Jarla could have played this turn, and it's still significantly less scary than the situation Swidz found himself in previously. So I think Swidz now has more license to just do his thing this turn, and there's less fear of punishes coming back the other way.
And if he's hovering this Ancient Mysteries, it looks like it is going to be a Dragon Caster into X. Maybe just a Deep Freeze on the Water Elemental. The only frustration for him is any minion development is just going to take 2 next turn.
Yes,
From the
that
Observer.
is a problem.
Observe and reflect.
None of it feels too great, just because it's into the Water Elementals, right? Which is why I'd maybe lean to Deep Freeze, just because you can freeze 1, and at least half reliably get 1 to attack the next turn.
Ready for a show?
Go for the Power of Creation instead, and he did get a Dragon Caster, but that does not work how you would have maybe initially think. It's no Battle Cries. Evasive Worms don't do enough, and it is just Hoggers left, right, and center in this game today.
But I mean, kapow? This doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah, mate. Actually, just the worms into the... Was the worms into the Water Elementals just better?
Right.
They still live because they have 3 health, and you put the Elementals to 1, which you have Flame Ward in hand, there's Ping, there's
He could.
Not
So look
2
at it this
health
way.
Hoggers.
What
He can play
do?
2 5/1s and kill a Water Elemental, or he can play 2 4/2s. Which of those sounds better?
Do the 5/1s make little holes?
Well, no, but neither did these, right?
No, I agree. I'm only joking. Yes, I do think that
What
Hogger was
to
a bit of a
do?
snap pick, and maybe Swidz just forgot about the Observer.
Hmm.
Life
Did
and
not line
hope
up well, did it?
fight. Time runs out on me.
Oh! Oh! Malagos Aspect is Sarah Unleashed!
Frostbolt?
I would imagine Portals could be saved? No, he's just going to load out. Okay. That's interesting, because I was thinking, like, maybe you don't want freeze effects to start coming down and then Portals start coming out of your decks immediately. I was wondering whether the Ysera Unleashed might be better held until this board state gets dealt with, so that you know that you first siphon a bunch of removal and make board space, so you're not, worst case scenario, burning Portals off the top.
You wanna know why I like this?
Go on.
Going into Swidz's turn 9, again, no Reno, and Jarla could just Alex Strauss him next turn. And outside of a freeze, maybe just kill him.
It's just another puzzle box. Oh, disappoint.
Sol getting into this puzzle box.
I mean, I just want him to have a handful of puzzle boxes that he's never going to play. That's kind of where my sadistic sense of humor is at right now. Just keep picking the puzzle boxes, but you never get to play them.
Fine. I was a little bit surprised that Jarla could have picked Frostbolt, I believe, from his Maligos. And I was a little bit surprised because, again, maybe I'm just too in the aggressive mindset. But this board he put forward demanded a freeze to be non-threatening. And if that's not the case, you have Alex Straza swing Frostbolt.
You think this is your time? It is mine.
Just test for the secret with the Water Elemental. Everything else lives if it is the Flame Ward. If it's Ice Barrier, then it's Ice Barrier, and that happens all the time anyway. And Jarla could just follow up with just a Malygos' Flame Strike. Clear off these Elementals and has Swidz if he has Reno.
I was going to say, I think you don't do that because you want the Water Elemental to trade instead.
Well, not if you were Flame Striking, right?
Right. That seems a bit overindulgent to me.
Time runs out on me.
Yeah, I think
Again,
my
like,
point was,
there's
I don't think
multiple-
Jarla needs to commit much more to this board, and if he doesn't, then just Flame Strike and ask Swidz
No.
to do something.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why another reason why I think that trade is important, because he doesn't want small minions on his board. Because any small minion on his board is just a minion that's getting frozen and then taking up a space that could be a Dream Portal later on being burned off the top. So I think like that freeze is important, A, because it freezes the opponent's minion and reduces options, and B, clears himself a board space. And board spaces are super premium right now.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Caligos comes down for Swidz, and instead of spending mana that could have been up to 8 to 10 mana, he has to go with this Frost Nova. As I said, the board's there for Jarla. It's only getting bigger.
Welp.
Box. Imagine he rips the box.
Wind Fury Siamat trade with
Rush?
Kalikos?
Yeah, I think so. Jarla can throw away. It's not even throwing it away because you kill a high value minion, but he can just easily throw this away, lose it, no problem. Look at his board. He still has tons of threats because this Ysera he got is generating so many extra threats in his deck. It means that he can throw away the ones he generally plays a little bit more haphazard.
Also leaves him that all-important board space open. He has 5 portals remaining, so he's a little bit over 1 in 3 to draw a portal next turn and fill up that last board spot. Which would be a problem
That's
for
all.
him.
Looks like there's only one way to go. He's going to open that box. Elemental's still alive, gets to attack.
That's nothing. That's nothing. That's something. Alright, he's working on it. It's a piece-by-piece clear, but he's getting there. There it is. Okay.
Still a little bit weird, right?
Yep. Still a bit more to come, though. Okay. This is a Never Surrender in play, as well as a side quest, which I am close to 100% sure will not get completed. Wait, he'd already ticked it once because he summoned a Rush minion. That's amazing. He summoned the Rusteed Raider off Soul Mirror and it ticked his side quest. That's amazing. I'm so happy.
Interesting that this isn't a Flame Strike turn, once again, from Jarla. Is Jarla saving this Malygos' Flame Strike for just absolute all-end crazy emergency moments here?
It looks that way, yeah. I get where your head's at. You're trying to use it as a tempo card where possible, just to say, right, you know, screw your board, I'm going to hit you in the face. But I think Jarla is just holding on to it in case he falls behind, because I think that is kind of emblematic of the matchup he's playing, right? Like, no matter how secure you feel, you could just end any given turn miles behind on board, right? Like, it's just possible.
Yeah, and Reno's not even got cooking yet, has he, right? So
Yeah.
Time runs out on
anything
me.
can happen once he comes down.
Rules out eye for an eye, so I believe Jarla's logic is down to repentance and never surrender now at this point. And he gets the information that it is never surrender.
Yeah, even Jarla just respecting, just trading away.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really tough one to get your head around, though, as well, because I think it is also about who you are as a player. Because in my mind, all I'm thinking is the more the trades happen, the more you're just giving Swidz the time to do crazy things and to activate Amazing Reno and so on.
Yeah.
As opposed to like just ending the game. So I feel like Jarla has been ahead most of the mid to late game for this actual game.
What? There was 18 cards in his deck. He just drew 3 back-to-back portals.
Can we Flame Strike now, so?
Now the Flame Strike looks the most exciting of any of the turns you've suggested it, yes. The minions
Which
are
probably means-
suitably high enough health to justify it.
Could still go Alex Straza Ice Barrier if he wants to go aggro and make Swidz respond.
Yeah. I mean, your board's lethal without the Alex next turn, right? Like, if you just make a board and then play Alex
Sure.
next turn instead, it's just lethal anyway. So I don't think it's an Alex Straza turn this turn.
What to do?
I am starting to get behind this Flame Strike plan, though. These minions are annoying me, and I don't want to have to think about them anymore.
Time runs out on me. I wonder.
Just to do something. I thought he hovered box, and I was like, Jarla, that is not enough time to deal with a young box. Do not press that button for him.
He just ropes that whole turn, looks down at his hand, picks up box, and was like, oh yeah, I've got
Let's
Bloodlust.
go.
I've just got Bloodlust. It's right here. Look. Boom. Just
Lizard can put
Bloodlust, Wind Furies, both minions. Oh, there it is.
And attacks with them for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Blizzard can come down now for Swidz to just buy himself a little bit more time. The Azure Explorer is going to help use some extra damage as well. Mate, this Blizzard are pretty close to a full removal with the help of that Flame Ward.
Yep.
There must be a way.
I don't know about you, Raven, but my goal for this game is just for Swidz to complete this side quest somehow. That's all I'm interested in now.
I was going to say I'm not sure how that'll work out, but I've actually just lost track of how many boxes Swidz even has left. Probably 100 right now.
He has 2.
Has he not played a natural box yet?
No, remember he arcane breathed on turn 1
I know
and
he got
discovered
one, yeah,
puzzle
yeah.
box. Yeah, that's the only one he's played. He still
Oh
has 2
my.
puzzle boxes in his deck. So Jarla knows this is lethal if that's Flame Ward,
I bring life.
so he's just going to try it. Okay.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. These elementals are not that much of a threat right now. And he can also redistribute. You can actually... What do you think about bumping the elementals into the elementals and protecting your 8/8s? Great.
Yeah, I like that,
Time
I
runs
think.
out on me.
Again, I don't think this extra 6 damage is super important. You have just so much damage in play that if there's no answer, Swidz is dead next turn anyway. Wow, okay.
It is a weird point in Hearthstone where Mage isn't known for its burst damage, and it's all minion based. You know, like minion based setups. A lot of the time, you're not really too scared of fireballs and pyroblast, unless Yogg's box or the prime has been. And then your turn.
Now this blizzard is gonna hurt.
Ooh. Well. Lethal.
Uh-huh.
The serious thing Jarla has to consider is he's only got room to play one minion this turn.
Yep.
And does he want that
What
minion to be
do?
Malygos?
What to do?
Oh yeah. Just gonna answer the board state instead.
Ping and then ice.
It might be about time for that ice barrier to come into play. Starting to get a little spooky. Yep.
Also, not seeing a great reason not to, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just fine chucking down now. Is that a no?
But again, you see that like board space premium I was talking about, right? Like Jarla just really does not want to fill his board here, particularly against the Frost Nova deck. You see the Frost Nova get drawn. It's a big problem. Those are underwhelming, I'm going to say.
Ooh. Does he want to do that though? Probably not this turn, right? He wants to Nova and then pass and let him have that board space full, as you mentioned, and then have that as a backup.
Wait, ping face and not an 8/4? Oh, he has Explorer in his hand. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. He's going to Explorer and Explosion the next turn for the full clear.
Now we're getting to a point where it's just worth just Malygos.
Let's have a look at what freezes have been used. One Blizzard has been used, and most essentially, both Frost Novas and a generated Frost Nova have all been used. So, yes, filling board now is significantly less scary, because there
He can
are...
also ping his own minion.
There are extremely few ways that Swidz could lock the board out without dealing damage to enough things that they're just going to die anyway.
Right. And being on 1 health, he can ping one off anyway if he really needs it.
Yes.
It's an extreme response.
I think the question needs to be asked whether maybe Jarla got impatient with this Flame Strike. We got impatient with it for sure.
Oh, I got impatient with it from that first shot choosing of it.
But Jarla is a much more patient person than we are. And you can see now, just step by step, just creeping in turn by turn, he is starting to fall slightly behind on board.
Well, maybe it's also the opposite. Maybe he saved it for too long. You should have pressured the game much earlier.
Quiet, Raven.
Can't freeze your board if he's not drawn the freezes yet.
Take the good one. That makes sense. So now with Solarian, he can Explosion for 5. Which means he can then ping... He can just trade with the Water Alley if he wants to.
May as well ping, he can't do anything else.
Yeah, sure.
And he doesn't care. Again, once you played that Malygos, you don't really care what it does most of the time afterwards. As most decks aren't running Conjurers anymore, so there's no real reason to try and keep it alive for that long.
So Jarla whiffed on the Discover for the Malygos for lethal. Still has the same thing now with a Kalecgos.
What are you on about? That was like lethal to me.
True. Good point.
I see a spell that says deal safe.
You're in my hands.
We're gonna go. Is it gonna go for freeze?
Okay.
Ping face, make it slightly more lethal. The turn.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
This does likely put the Solarian Prime in the deck next turn, as I doubt Swidz is going to want to leave it up. If it gets left up, great. If If it doesn't, then you've got a chance to draw in the Prime, which is also a chance at lethal a lot of the time, especially when your opponent's only on 6 health.
So there are 2 puzzle
Must be a
boxes,
way.
a blizzard, and I'm unsure what else in his deck, but I'm going to take that to mean not much, and that he's going to get offered both of those options. We'll see how wrong I am.
There must be a way.
You're in my
2 Ray of Frosts in there still? Wow, has he not seen Ray of Frost this game? Yeah, okay. There we go. Just in time, I think.
And now, this is a tough call. All jokes aside, do you think he ever wanted to box that turn? Or is he so far ahead on board that, yeah, this should be enough?
Yeah, I mean, it's scary, right? Because you know the threat of just generated spell in to kill you is always very real. Oh, how about many
Gets
generated
arcane
spells?
missiles as well.
Yes, he does, with the
should
spell
he arcane-
damage.
Should the arcane missiles?
I have become one
No.
with the void.
Blizzard and Flame Strike and so on can clear the way for that to deal damage to face. Yep, there's that. Okay,
Whoa!
it's getting close.
Missiles,
It's getting
attack.
very close. Lethal. That
There it
is
is.
lethal for Jarla and the series. Razor fine margins came all the way down to it. And as always, there were a ton of decisions in that game, Raven. But is it better to just sit back and enjoy the fireworks instead?
That's normally my approach, Sol. Rather talk about decisions and just watch the shiny things happen. But I will say, I think that was a good representation of the opposite side to what I think a lot of people talk about those decks, right? Oh, it's all box, it's all just whatever. There were a lot of choices. We discussed about 800 turns that he could have played Flame Strike and push damage, could have Alex Strazed and gone aggressive, could have played more defensive sometimes and focused on some more removal. There was options where, although, yes, kind of random, Swidz could have pulled out a box earlier. He could have not picked Hogger, I think was the big question mark for me in that specific game when he had the choice of Hogger into the Observer, which just obliterated the taunts anyway. Could have killed one of those Water Elementals, as you mentioned, or put them both to 1 and had them left over. So there was a lot of questions with that game, but Jarla did take the victory overall, and he's going to take that win over Swidz and take a strong win over that Mage, because although that game was very close, the Mage lost, Swidz's Mage lost many times in that series.
It did. And it's kind of heartbreaking, right? He put 2 boxes in his deck, and then he had to generate one to even play one that game.
Right.
Like he had two boxes bottom 6 or something ridiculous. But yeah, I think that was actually a really intricate game, which, you know, maybe 2 puzzle boxes being bottom 6 had something to do with that. But still, the Flame Strike decision, I think, you know, I thought you were talking about it too early. Me and Jarla agreed on the turn to use it, but now I'm starting to think maybe that was still too early, and he was sort of getting himself into trouble a little bit because of that, because that sort of swing on the board that didn't seem possible that I was talking about did happen. Like, it's always possible with Mage. But then, like, what an ending, right? Just slowly, piece by piece, Arcane Missiles, Blizzard, Flame Strike, pick it all apart, and then Malagos Missiles for the finish. Ah, chef's kiss.
Yeah, definitely was one of those explosive endings we do like to see, and Mage often does just kick out regardless. But that was that series there. And again, congratulations to Jarla taking that victory. We are going to go to a break while we set up our last match of the day and get comfortable, because it could be a long one. It is going to be Bunny Hopper versus Psycho in match number 4. We're going to go to a break, but we'll be right back.